It's the echo in your brain. You know you can't sustain the misconceptions in your mind. One day you'll see for sure what all of this was for. Then you can leave it all behind. The journey begins. I am the one, yeah, that will show the proof. I am the one, yeah, that is searching for the truth. I am the whispers of the logic in your mind. I am an agent of the Logos. In the beginning was found this thing that cannot speak. It's how we all truly learn. It's only ever attained when one lets go of fear. So don't let wisdom pass you by. The journey begins. I am the one, yeah, that will show the proof. I am the one, yeah, that is searching for the truth. I am the whispers of the logic in your mind. I am an agent of the Logos. It was there all along. How could I never have seen this thing that's danced all around? It wasn't until I left behind the things I believed that I could see things so clear. The journey begins. Become the one, yeah, that will show the proof. Become the one, yeah, that is searching for the truth. Become the whispers of the logic in their mind. Become an agent of the Logos. Become an agent of the Logos.
Yep,
We are the agents of the Logos.
And we are live, everybody. Welcome. It is Wednesday, the old hump day, the new Trivium day. So, Trivium discussion day today, everybody. Free to come in. We will be going over, and we do expect people to voice their opinions about what we're talking about. Very simple stuff, but we are taking further steps in the progression of working towards the Trivium. We might get there today. So welcome. All the sound good for everybody? Looks good. I think everybody can hear us. I've not made any mistakes with the sound or anything.
Good evening, everyone. Am I coming through all right?
That sounds good. Raven, let me just check I can get your screen on. Yes. I'm on your screen now, Raven, if that's what you want and you want to be talking over this. It looks good on the...
Okay. Right, good evening, everyone, or whichever part of the world it might be. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. We're going to have a cursory look today at chapter 5 of the Organon categories. It's quite, it can get quite deep in parts, so we're sort of having an introductory look at it and to see how and start to gain a feel for how it applies to the rest of the categories as Aristotle defined them. So I'll just move over to the first page. Basically, it starts with the statement, substance in the truest and primary and most definite sense of the word is that which is neither predicable of a subject nor present in a subject. So if you've been here for the few weeks beforehand, you can understand that what we're talking about this week in chapter 5 is basically the substance. Primary substance, secondary substance, sometimes known as the essence. So I think Kevin wants to have a chat about the Porphyry tree and go over that again, some recapping and sort of to set the scene for this evening. So,
Yeah, leave that there for a second, though, Raven.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, so as Raven said, the introduction to Chapter 5 starts out with this, that a substance, a primary substance, which we'll get to in a minute, is that which is neither predicable of a subject nor present in a subject. And if those of you that might remember from Chapter 2, remember we were going through that difficulty of what is in and of. This is one of those things. There were 4 of them, and I think last week I in my presentation I had kind of done a quadrant chart, and one of those quadrants was in fact this exact thing, that in this case a substance is that which is neither predicable of a subject nor present in the subject. So again, we have to go over these things and over these things and over these things because the language that is used is strange, right? So just to recap again, predication and what it means by predicable of. So if I say something is predicable of a subject, the subject is the specific thing I'm talking about, right? So let's say Socrates, to use an example that's used all over the Organon. Or the Porphyry's tree, I should say. And then the predicable of Socrates could be man, right? Man, it can be predicable of Socrates because Socrates is a man. So that's an example of something that could be predicated of a subject. Well, in this case, a primary substance cannot be predicated of a subject. So the example that I just used, man, Socrates is man, and man is predicable of Socrates, cannot be said of a primary substance, right? So man, in other words, can't be a primary substance. And you'll see that in a minute, because that is predicable of a subject. Man is predicable of Socrates. Nor can it be in a subject. And by in a subject, it means as part of that subject. So if I said a subject is Raven, so Raven is the subject, but I said Socrates is in Raven, makes no sense whatsoever. So you can't have basically a subject in another subject, is kind of what that means. So I just wanted to get that out of the way because it's kind of a recap of Chapter 2, and it is for those of you that remember the video that I played last week of the gentleman that talked about going through Aristotle, going through the Organon and the categories, and that Aristotle almost mercilessly builds and builds and builds and builds on what he's covered before. Got to keep remembering that. You got to keep going back to and trying to get your head back around it, because if you don't use it every day, you're not going to be able to remember it. So I wanted to just bring that up before we get into the rest of this thing here, and then we're going to go through and do some interactive stuff. So you guys in the Discord, people in the YouTube chat, you guys are going to need to chime in here a little bit to make sure that folks are getting it, or at least trying to get it, because we're all learning this. Raven and I are by no means an expert in this stuff. It is sometimes difficult to get through. Okay.
So this is defining substance, if I understand this correctly. I just got here. Okay.
Yep. And you'll see in a minute. Substance is is really, when you think about substance in regards to predication, think about primary substance. And Raven will show you in a few minutes. There is a difference between primary and secondary substances, and we'll get to that in a second. All right. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. As you can see, you've got the very shocked-looking little wise old owl on the picture. That's a wise old owl that's just been given the organon to read.
Exactly. That is exactly me. Little doubt of that.
At the moment. Right, I'll just move on to the next page. Then.
Yeah, good.
You want me to enlarge this? In which section do you want to start at, Kevin?
Yeah, let's start at the bottom. So
Right,
focus in on the bottom. So this is, again, if you remember from one of our. Oh no, that's all right.
That again. I've gone onto a different page.
That's okay.
There we go.
If you guys remember from one of our first, while Raven brings us back up, one of our first discussions around Porphyry's tree. So Porphyry was basically a commentary. He wrote a commentary or an explanation of the organon or categories, and called Isagogi. And so a lot of what we get on the understanding that we get is from Porphyry. And this diagram that you see here is called Porphyry's tree, and it is really a tree that goes through genus and species. I think everybody probably at least understands some form of what genus and species in, but we're going to see how important that is to language and to naming things and to definitions, which you wouldn't normally think of. At least I don't in my upbringing and my schooling, right? So the idea of substance is, again, at the very, very bottom of this Porphyry's tree, you see he uses the example of Socrates. Socrates is a specific individual, right? Not anyone else named Socrates, but Socrates himself. Just like I'm an individual, Raven's an individual, John's an individual, Bev's an individual. It's those individual, could be people, could be horses, could be cups, could be anything. It's in reality what that specific thing or person is. That is the primary substance. So that primary substance is, for the most part, what's being talked about when we get into what Raven's going to cover in a minute, and what we're going to talk to you guys about briefly, is all the attributes that can be predicated of Socrates, below Socrates, or within Socrates, or be said of Socrates that's not the things above it. So I know it's a little bit complex, but if you think about what the ovals above Socrates, you have man. Socrates is a man, correct? Socrates is also a rational animal. Socrates is also an animal. Socrates is also an animated body, and so on and so forth throughout that tree. But there's other things that can be said about Socrates, or better yet, about anything that is specific, any primary substance.
And I think we need to define animal as well.
Absolutely.
Because I think many of us would have a different definition of animal. And can I ask, was Porphyry a contemporary of Socrates?
No, he was a couple hundred years after, as I understand it, 200 to 300 years after, maybe longer than that. Maybe it's several hundred years after Socrates. Yeah, so he was not an immediate contemporary, no. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, John. And we struggle, again, I'll say, and we've talked about this before, in modern times, right? We struggle with language that's used by ancients. And in this case, absolutely an ancient being, 200 or 300 AD, right? Or BCE, depending on your how you want to talk about modern or common era. So yeah, using the term animal, a lot of people would have a problem with that. Say, well, I'm a human being, I'm not an animal, right? And totally understand that, right? And that's those types of things, those types of arguments, if you will, can happen actually in any Porphyry's tree that you would create, right? When is a cup not a cup, right? I'm looking for things around my desk here. When is a flashlight not a flashlight? It's
Say
those kinds of discussions. Yeah.
say you had a dog, a lion, and a man in a cage. Could someone
Mhm.
walk up and say those are three animals in that cage? And would people understand that way?
In modern times, possibly. I think a lot of that has to probably has to go to someone's idea of what man is, right? In the strictest sense, if you don't believe that man is anything more than a breathing organism, breathing, walking, and some would say thinking, but others would say not,
How
thinking organism,
we're
right?
currently looked at?
Yeah, you'd say, yeah, three animals in the cage, absolutely.
Okay, thank
Others
you.
would say absolutely not. There's two animals and a man, right?
Okay.
Where did the word Suzudlik come from? John Suzudlik? Is it John?
Yeah, it's Polish.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never heard you talk before, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, yeah, it's just it's my name. It's Polish.
Oh, nice. Sorry.
Not a
That's all
problem.
right.
I think one other thing to point out about these trees is that there are innumerable stages within these stages that have been set down here that can be created in a porphyry tree. So you can have species and genus in between what's been decided here, if you know what I mean. So that in a lot of the ways it's down to the person that's creating that porphyry tree, how complex or simple they want to make it. That's my understanding of it anyway. I don't know whether Kevin agrees with.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yep, 100% agree with that. So as I said, you could predicate of Socrates anything above that in the ovals, but you could also predicate Socrates or anything that's a primary substance of other qualities as well. And Raven, if you go to the next slide here, this is one that Raven had presented a couple weeks back on chapter 4 in the introduction to the actual categories.
Just reduce the.
Yep, that's fine.
Is
So
that
here's
okay?
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So here's the 10 categories. You see substances at the top, right? And we pointed out last week that substance is really the way this really should look is that quantity, quality, relation, place, time, position, condition, action, suffering as a term really should all be indented under substance because they relate back to the substance. In this case, the primary substance. In this case, whatever the specific thing is that you're talking about, could be Socrates, could be this cup that I'm holding in my hand right this very minute. It could be whatever that thing is, right? So you can actually predicate any of those things to the primary substance as well. So one of those, for example, is position. So if I said Socrates is sitting, right? That's a position that Socrates is in at the moment, right? Or if I said the cat is sitting, that specific cat, right?
Would that be the same as a political position?
No,
Sorry. Okay.
no, it's more of an attribute. Think of those things from quantity down to suffering. Think of those things as attributes of the primary substance of that specific thing.
I don't mean to throw you off, but could a political position be considered an attribute of the substance? Or is that just something, a mental thought that's not really part of the substance?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Raven?
No, I was going to say that's it's not one I can answer straight away. I'd be having to study all these because there's a lot more into these categories once you start looking into it than you think on the surface. So it may come under. It depends how you're talking about the politics as well, because it could be if it's a relational thing. If you're talking about one form of politics against a different form of politics, that's a relational categorization. You might be talking about what's in your country. It's Democrats and Republicans. That's more of a relational type thing. If you're looking at the relation between those two political parties, or it might be, you could be looking at at the political history of something, in which case you'd find things that would fit in time and place, because you might be
Yeah.
talking about where these political parties develop. So you see what I mean? They don't
Yeah.
all slot into just one category.
Yeah, I see that. It's
So
great.
it can get quite complex about, you know, if you're looking at action and suffering, they're not very good terms. I've never come across really good terms for these last two. I don't know whether you have, Kevin, that sums up what they mean by it. It's like affection, what is affecting something and how it gets affected.
Right.
So there you might be talking about what was the political philosophy you could put under action, because it brought sort of something into reality, like a political thought may have developed a certain stance on how, say, healthcare was developed or something, and then that would have an effect on which would under here is called suffering. But basically, that's like how that, say, if we were talking about a political party being developed, you'd also be looking at what they did and how that might fall in, how it affected people by their political stance. So
I know
it was really clever, really, that he nailed it down to 10 what he called qualities, and the you can fit so many things in so many different places. It takes a bit of thought sometimes, I think, and a bit of lateral thinking sometimes to slot them in place. Does that make any sense?
You did a wonderful job, though. You really cleared that up for me. Thank you. Great job,
Okay,
Rick.
thanks.
Yeah, and I agree. I think I asked the question when we first covered this piece of it a couple of weeks ago, whether or not anyone in philosophy or logic had tried to create other categories. I don't know, but we have these 10. Really, it's 9 if you think about the 9 below substance, because they all refer back to the substance, a primary substance in this case. I think in the YouTube chat, Paper Organist said substance tells us what it is and therefore exists. So, and very true. So, and then the attributes below it, the organon calls them accidents. You'll see that word, but again, that's a different word for us today in modern times, right? But in the organon, they're listed as accidental attributes, if you will, of the primary substance. That means that they can change. Those things can change. So Socrates, for instance, or that cat that I'm talking about, could change its place, could change its time, right? Could change its position, could change its condition. These things can change. There can be a change in the quantity of something, right? So all these things can change. When you look back at the tree, though, man can't change, right? Socrates is a man. That's it. That's all you got. There's no changing that. That's not an accident. These things are accidental. If you think about them that way, right? But they are all used to describe that primary substance. And I just wanted you guys to grasp that. And let's go through a few of them. This is where you guys are going to have to participate with me. And I know, John, you're great at participating, but hopefully there'll be others, and I'll keep an eye out on the YouTube chat as well.
Yeah, but so, if I throw you off where you're going, just let me know, because
no, it's good, because it's how we're going to kind of understand how these things work, right? So let's use quality for a second. And if I said I have well, let's John, let me use you for a minute. Do you have something, a inanimate object in front of you that you can grab in your hand?
Yes.
Okay, grab it, hold it.
Got it.
Okay, tell me about the quantity.
There's 2 pieces.
Okay. 2 pieces, but one thing.
One thing, right?
Okay, one of that thing.
One thing, right?
Okay. What about quality?
Quality, I think it's excellent quality.
Okay, you're thinking in terms of performance, or
Right.
or
Correct.
sturdiness or something like that. Give me another quality of that.
Another quality of this.
Yep. Give me a quality.
Quality. Wow. Convenient.
Okay. Does it have a color?
It does. Okay, you would consider that a quality?
Yeah, for in most of the examples for quality, yeah, color is a quality.
Okay, it's silver, stainless steel.
Okay. All right. There you go. So relation. This might be to the substance. So if you're the primary substance, where is that? By the way, what is the thing? Is it a cup?
Yeah,
What
it's
is it?
a travel mug.
Travel mug. Okay. So what is that in relation to you? Where is it in relation to you?
About a foot in front of me on the table.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Right. And it's in front of you, or you are behind it, or right. It is in front of you. The travel mug is in front of John. Right.
Right.
So you see how these relational things, not to use relational, right? But you see how these things relate to one another, or how they're accidents. So now, so do me a favor, and everybody could picture this in their minds, right? So you said the travel mug is in front of you. Okay, so take the travel mug and put it off to your right hand side.
Done.
Okay, is it in front of you anymore?
Relatively.
Okay, put it a little bit towards the back if you can, or step in front of it,
Okay, I
or
got it.
slide in front of it. Now is it in
Okay.
front of you?
No longer in front of me.
Okay, so you've changed the relation of you to that the primary substance to that travel mug, yeah?
Relation has changed. Correct.
Yep. And you've also changed the place of it, correct?
Changed the place. Correct.
Yep. And in the few
I changed the place of the cup, not me.
that's
Just
correct. That's
we're
correct.
clear.
But that's correct. You've changed the place of the cup, right? So the primary substance in this case is the cup.
Correct.
You in the little time that we've had, you've also changed the time necessarily, because the cup in time was in front of you, was sitting on your desk, I imagine, or on a table, and then it was in front of you, and then now it was on the side, and then it's in the back, right? Different times.
I would agree there was a duration lapse. Correct.
Okay. All right. And then position could be relational potentially, but it could also be, like I said, a better example would be sitting, right? That John is sitting in a chair. If you were the primary substance, right, you'd be sitting.
Right.
So those are the types of things. Is that making sense?
You could even go back to the very first thing you said, where you said the quantity was 2. So, in what way is it 2, and what's the relationship of those two parts of it?
Well, we got the lid and the cup itself,
Mhm.
Right.
or the mug, whatever you want to call it.
So how do they relate to each other? Are they connected, or are they loose, separate items?
They're both.
So it's a
both-
connected.
In order to use it, they have to be connected, and when you're not using it, they're separate items.
So we can see how complex it can get, even with something as simple as a cup. You can be covering, depending on which route you take down your examination of the situation or the object, how the different qualities and everything come into play.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't think you could get from a simple cup that you could get so many qualities sort of being covered.
You notice I try to be very specific in answering the question, so I don't want to mislead. So
As you should be. That's an important concept to have.
It is.
Right? So in the YouTube paper, organist says, so roundness may be substance of a circle. It is cause for a circle to exist as a circle. Without roundness, it could not exist as a circle. Therefore, without it, this figure cannot be a circle. And that's true. I would say for it to be a primary substance, if it's a primary substance, it's that circle. Which one? The one I just drew on this piece of paper right here. That circle has roundness, right? But roundness, when it relates to circles, that to all circles is different, because that's the all circles is not a primary substance any longer. and Raven will get to why that is in a second and what those all things would be then, right? But that was a really good example in the YouTube chat. Excellent example. So that was it. This is more of a recap, and I think as we go through these things, whether it's in the organon or whether when we get to other parts of the trivium, when we get into logic and rhetoric, it's all going to have to be recapped and recapped and recapped and recapped, so that these things are constantly circulating in your mind. Because if they're not, you're going to lose it very easily. So, all right, Raven, on to you with the next piece.
Right, these are some aspects of chapter 5 that I thought were relevant and important to pick out. Here it talks about substance, as we've said, as we've already stated, in the truest and primary and most definite sense of the word, is that which is neither predicable of a subject nor present in a subject. So we gave some instances and examples earlier on, talking about Aristotle and that, and in chapter 5 he actually gives you the example of an individual man or an individual horse, but this obviously then leads you onto the subject of, well, if you've got something which is called a primary substance, or something which is before something else, that automatically gives you, because it's a relational thing, a secondary quality to it. So, and what Aristotle says about that, he makes the statement, but in a secondary sense, those things are called substances within which, as species, the primary substances are included. Also, those which are genera include the species. So basically, not only does it include the primary essence and the primary substance, like we said, all of these secondary qualities fall underneath substance. They all take you back to and contain the primary substance in the long run. But what you get is the secondary substances, and this is where you start. If you remember the Porphyry tree that Kevin showed earlier on, where you saw genera and species, and if you looked closely, you could see that each subject, depending on which way you looked, whether you were looking from the subject up to the previous subject, or whether you were looking from the subject down to the next subject, you're looking either to generate what generated that, where it came from, or you're looking to where it's going to go, into what species it will divide and spread. And he also says, I've put a quote at the bottom, for instance, the individual man is included in the species of man, and the genus to which the species belongs is animal. This is the example that you were looking at earlier on. These therefore, that is to say, the species man and the genus animal are termed secondary substances. So everything that isn't a primary substance and has a genera and a species is actually a secondary substance. Does everybody understand that? Is anybody got any questions over that? Did I explain that? Okay,
predicable was confusing.
Yeah.
Predicable.
So
It's always confusing.
yeah, so let me see if I could break it down a little bit further. So in the example previous to this, so go up one slide, if you will, Raven.
Into that.
Yeah. So remember when I said these 9 things under substance, they're attributes, right? They're attributes of the substance, or they're called accidents, right? Okay, so these are accidents or attributes of the primary substance. These things are, if you think them in terms visually, they're below the substance. In fact, they're shown here below the substance, the primary substance, right? But in the tree, if you remember the tree that's in the slide before, you have the primary substance in this example is at the very bottom. So if you think about those 9 attributes or those 9 accidents that are listed under substance, they would be listed, if they were on this tree, they would be listed under Socrates at the very bottom. Okay? So there's this idea that there are things related to the subject being whichever you're talking about. In this case, the primary substance being Socrates. There are things which attribute themselves to Socrates, those 9 things, right? Or accidents. But there's also things above it as well. The things above it aren't accidents, right? Those things don't change, as I said. They are forever. So, and that's that they are also in themselves substances. So Socrates is a substance, but in this case, Socrates, the man, that particular individual, is a primary substance, the most specific kind of substance, right? And then he or she or the cup that you had, John, or whatever, can have a litany of attributes to it. But the pieces above it are all species and then genera as you go up. Species, genera, and then there's genera that are also species, that can also be species at the same time. Because that's a relational aspect, genus and species. Those are relational. So you can have substances. Man is a substance. Rational animal is a substance. Animal is a substance. Animated body is a substance, and so on. All of those are substances, but they're not a primary substance. Socrates is the primary substance in this example. So those Aristotle called secondary substances. Those are secondary substances. Secondary to what? Secondary to the primary substance that is Socrates in this case. Does that clear it up any?
Yes. Yeah, in a way, yes. I do have questions, but I'm not going to interrupt right now.
Oh no, interrupt. We need the discussion.
Questions is what we're here for.
Yeah, I have is it the fact that it's a substance when you're talking about the subject? Because to me, it seems backwards, if you know what I mean. I would imagine the substance is what it's made of rather than the subject. Is there like a word shift that's happened somewhere?
There is. Yeah,
especially within me.
Times.
Yeah,
no, well, it's not just within you, right? It's within the modern understanding of the word substance.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so you're right. Substance, we've all, especially in the Western world, with that English word substance, we've all thought about it as, well, it's something that's made up of something else, right? It's the plastic that's in this pill bottle I'm holding in my hand, right? That's a substance of which this thing is made. That's not how Aristotle's using it in this case.
That's exactly the way the word affected me as well. So
yep. And this is a perfect example, guys. This is the problem with anything, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about an ancient text or a text that was something that was written 30 years ago. You have to understand that there could have been a language shift, a definition shift. Something could have changed. And the thing that at least that I've gotten, and Raven can tell you what he's gotten so far about going through the Organon, but what I've gotten is there is intention to words, and you have to strive to understand what that means. You can't just automatically think, oh, I know what that means. As soon as you do that, most likely, especially when we're in this kind of thing, you're going to make a mistake. So in this case, Aristotle is saying that substance is a thing. It's substantive. It's essence. Remember, Raven talked about that. There's the Greek word for it. And Essie's out of the Discord now, but ousia, right, Raven? That was the word, the Greek word? Yeah. So it's the essence of something, right? It's what makes that thing that thing. It's what makes that thing that particular thing, right? It's what makes John John and not any other John. Do you see what I mean?
It seems to have a bit of a twist to it, because one of the things that I read when I was reading through, I can't remember whether it was exactly Aristotle's work or whether it was I was reading somebody else's commentary on it, but they basically said the matter of the substance. And then when you think about it, there's an aspect of substance which is ousia and is basic essence being, which is almost verging on the metaphysical, and yet the matter of the subject is actually telling you that it consists of matter. That these subjects are, they're not just conceptual or philosophical or spiritual things. They're also made of matter. So it's as if the substance has got like a bit of a twist to it, the way that we use substance now. And I'm sure that in the past, if we dug far enough, we'd probably find that perhaps there was a slightly different word that has been amalgamated into one. Because when as Kevin was saying, when he went through the organ, and what you find is various things jump out at you and stand out to you. And one of the things that, as I was going through it and was going back and rereading the chapters before, you'd suddenly think, hold on a minute, there's something strange going on here about this primary and secondary. And you start to suspect that there's more to it than you think when you first time you come to it. I don't know whether you find that, Kevin, whenever you're going back to it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And maybe this will help as well, Bev. I don't know if you're paying attention to the YouTube chat, but Paper Organist is right on this. So it says, Bev, what is made of is seeking material cause. Chair is made of wood. Material cause for this chair is wood then. Material cause is not a substance. That's exactly right. Material cause is not a substance. So we have to rethink what substance means in this context.
Yeah,
right?
it's one of those words. It sounds like one of those words that's completely shifted definitionally.
Yep, it has.
Yeah, from one end of this tree to the other, like conceptually, anyway.
Yeah. Even more, I because I'm a conspiracy theorist, I can derive any kind of evil intent to these kinds of switches. Some of them happen, I think, just happenstance, I'm sure. But if you think about substance, right, and like I said, that specific items are made up of what we term substances, whatever those substances are, they become generic. They don't really. It's not really then what it means to be that item, whatever it is you're holding, or that person, right? If substance is what makes that thing, then substance is something special. There's something almost spiritual in it, right? Rather than, it's just made up, like Paper Organist said, it's just wood. It's that chair is made up of wood. But if you've ever seen an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful chair, right? That's, you just look at it and your jaw drops at the whatever the chair maker had to do, the furniture maker had to do to make it look like that. I mean, it's just awe dropping, right? That's the essence. Yeah, the craftsmanship. That's the essence of it, of that chair, right? There's almost something spiritual to it, and we've lost that in the term substance. I believe that's what Aristotle was getting at.
That person who did it, that craftsman took whatever was inside of him, whatever he saw, and put it to the chair. So it's not just a piece of wood anymore. It's a reflection of that craftsman.
Yeah. Go ahead, spot on.
Yeah. Nice one, John. I was talking to a carpenter about this exact thing just yesterday, and we both agreed that obviously it's depends on who you are, where what circles you're traveling. But everyone I pretty much know is a tradesman. Anyway, so it's the skills that it takes to create something of your own, and the meaning and the attachment to everything that you make. I mean, I dabble a bit, and it's I've kind of forgot that and been reminded of it, of what a quality that is. So
sorry, spot on.
Yeah, go on.
All I was going to say was, I'm sure that there was some influence with Plato's idea of forms. You know, that somewhere is the perfect form of, say, a chair, and we struggle to bring that into manifestation. So that creative impulse to bring that inherent metaphysical beauty or functionality, whichever way you want to look at it, into the real world. I'm sure that because Aristotle obviously was involved in, had a view of Plato's philosophy as well, and I think Aristotle had a slightly different version of forms. But to me, this substance business speaks volumes to that kind of philosophy.
Yeah. Bev, did that help? Because you're right, you can get twisted round on what substance is being meant here.
Yeah. And now that I have to, like mentally note that there has been some definition shift in at least in what we now perceive substance to be and what Aristotle is talking about. Aristotle's more talking about the actual subject.
Correct.
And calling that substance.
Correct.
Yeah. It is easy to do.
A little bit later, Bev, when we go through a few more things.
Yeah, but it is...
Carry on now.
I was just going to say, but it is important to get that, to really get that new definition. I'll use the term definition for the moment. That new definition in your mind of substance, and in this case, primary substance being the lowest one, because Aristotle differentiates between primary substance, which in the example that Raven has up here is Socrates at the very bottom, and then the items above it, man, rational animal, animated body, and body, as being secondary substances. Secondary, not primary, secondary. But they are unchanging. That's the thing. That's how they're different from accidents. Those accidents that were listed, those attributes that were listed, those can change. These can't change. They are, Socrates is part of man. Man is part of rational animal. Rational animal is part of animal, and so on. Those things can't change. They don't change. Right? So hopefully that kind of clears.
They could be different colours, or then they go into, for instance, if it's an animal, then you could go into what colour it is, how many legs, blah blah blah.
Into species, isn't it? That's when it becomes. But that's when you're looking down to the species.
Okay.
And the attributes, right?
Yeah.
Because because color is absolutely an attribute. It's one of those accidents. Because you can have a brown horse, but you could have a white horse. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So those things can change in a species horse, just like you can have a person with blonde hair and a person with brown hair. That can change, but the species is the same, right? Mankind doesn't matter.
So you can have a genus horse, but you can have innumerable species underneath horse. So that's how it sort of works, isn't it? That if you're looking down to species, or you can be looking up to genus, and as you go up to the genera, it becomes less and less distinct, doesn't it?
I will give you a hint right now. If you thought that substance was a word that we have to relearn and learn what Aristotle means by it, wait till we get to what genus and species are. Because if you think that's just from your high school biology or grade school biology, think again. That's not what these mean. No, that's not what these mean. Yeah.
It's interesting as well, Bev, that I had the same revelation and question this afternoon with Kevin about this very subject, because I'd got the same issues you'd got with the word substance, and it was quite enlightening when you sort of, Kevin pointed out certain aspects of it and sort of flipped it all, and I thought, bloody hell. You're on your own having that one. It's almost as if it's designed to mislead you, but I'm not sure whether it was put in there on purpose or not. I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist as well, so I try to keep tight reins on it, talking of horses.
It's an excellent way to confuse people.
Yeah.
Wait till we talk about. Wait till we get a little bit further in the idea of substances. We've purposely left something out that we'll get to hopefully in a little bit here.
Yeah,
but
let's not put it in the right place.
It's because to me, a substance. Sorry, Raven. Sorry, mate. I was gonna say there's to me before this conversation, substance was a part of something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's not. It is the something. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah,
100%. 100%. Spot on. You are spot on. Spot on.
Thank you.
Yeah, because the secondary
Just wanted to clarify
substances, aren't they? So I had no idea. The way I see
yeah,
it,
but like I said before, you think substances are the attributes to the thing. But it turns out that it's.
No, they're a secondary substance. They're like a lower.
How did that happen? I mean, where did that happen? Have you figured that out yet? At what point did they go? You know, we got substance, which is the thing. We're going to break down the thing into substances.
No, I again, you can be a conspiracy theorist and say that it's all part of taking away the speciality, if you will, or the specialness, if that's a word, or I would say the idea of something that's created, right? The specialness for which something's created, whether that's a creator to man or that craftsman who made the chair, right?
Yeah. Like, can I just finish what I was saying a minute ago? Like with the guy that I was talking to. So basically, what he was saying was, he's sick to death of installing, MDF, square edges. This new fashion of basically it's the square cuts. That's all you got to do these days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he's different. In fact, 2 weeks ago he showed me some locks that he'd created, some medieval type locks that are push locks and levers and all this. So he's saying that, like, a tradesman had, like, it was a thing of beauty. You're creating something that really did mean something. Not to you, but the person that bought it, because they know how much effort went into it. Whereas now, I know, I'm not going off track totally, but I mean, I get what you're saying about that.
You're not off track at all. It's the idea that there's something that's one of a kind, right? This is one of a kind. It's that kind of specialness. If I go back to that term,
this one.
Exactly. And actually, Ian Adams brought up something in YouTube chat that, and I think that this could be correct. Evolution bull is what he put. I imagine he means bullshit, or it could mean bull, I suppose. Yeah. But I think there's something to that, right? That there is no substance is something that's special. It's something that makes something unique. It's something that, that again, it's one of a kind. Bev is one of a kind. Raven's one of a kind. Spot On's one of a kind. John's one of a kind. That's kind of gone away, right? That idea's gone away now.
But it's worse than that, Kevin. When you think about it, you compare a cathedral to a modern church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You think which one expresses the essence and the beauty and the wonder and the spiritual out of those two? We're devolving. Even the churches have become square cut, if you want to look at it in that way.
Good point. Really good point. Yeah. So that's what really hit me when I was reading through this, and that I finally got what I think Aristotle meant by using substance, and why he used primary substance, and why that seemed to be very, very important, and why you need to be careful in predicating those primary substances. And you take care in that, right? That there's something that's intentional about it, right? Because that primary substance is special. Whatever it is, it's special. There's
well, if you talk about, what about plants? I'm looking at a beautiful flower in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
and you could call it a plant or a flower.
Sure, it is,
but,
right?
I mean, how? Yeah. But it is one of a kind. There is not one like it. Again, it's not just another plant. I mean, I suppose it could be just another plant, but it is a singular thing of beauty, and
That's why it should be called a
it'll
primary
grow
substance.
differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, would you say the shrub is the primary substance? The flower and the bush itself, every part of it is the primary substance, and then to describe it.
Yeah. It's
is
what
the
you're.
secondary.
Yep, it's whatever you're entertaining, whatever that specific thing is that you're entertaining. It could be the flower. It could be the petal of the flower. Could be a primary substance, right? Could be the flower. Could be the bush that it came from. But the intent,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
The intention
So
is what you're
the
giving
leaf
it.
could be.
Yeah,
the
sure.
Primary.
Right. The
Right,
intention
okay, yeah.
is what the intention, not attention. The intention is what you're placing on it, spot on. Right? Because you're entertaining it.
Yeah. Do you want me to describe the shrub itself, one in particular part, or the flower, or the stem, whatever? Yeah, okay.
Right.
Or maybe it's the time of year that it needs to flower, that it does flower.
Yep.
And then you can go on to. Yeah.
The interesting thing is what Aristotle has given you is the 9 attributes that you could analyze that plant, and every part of it will fit into one of those 9 attributes, and then the sum of it all together gives you the substance, which is the prime substance, which is the essence of that plant. In totality, because because
I'm witnessing it, I'm seeing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
In reality, spot on.
It is. Yeah.
It is. And oh, by the way, you want to start blowing your mind? You can go back to Shakespeare. For those of you into Shakespeare, and to be or not to be, right? It is to be or not to be. That is the question. Start getting your head around that shit for a second, right? This opens up a whole different aspect that I believe we have lost in 2022.
You're right.
Always comes down to the identity of the thing, or like the amount of different ways he has of talking about these things, but to be specific about that thing, right?
Yeah. And it could be, you could play a game, a description game, and and see what you could come up with. I mean, without actually saying what it actually is, by describing.
Yeah.
It would, that'd be quite interesting.
That would actually be practicing your predication as well. You say things about things, because that's, as we all know now, right? As we've all learned, that's predication.
When they do that, they normally chuck it into a TV show and chuck a load of celebrity shit at it. But I mean, like, a word specific, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, good discussion. All right.
Should we move on to?
Yep.
Well, basically, secondary substances are composed of the species and the genera. That's what he states there, and then it's a discussion around what you make of that. I see that anything below, or if you look at the Porphyry tree, the way it's set up, anything above, whichever direction you want to look, from primary substance is actually a secondary substance, and it is just composed of your species and your genera. I don't think there's much. Is there any much more to say about that, Kevin? What's your thoughts on that one?
Not at the moment. Yeah, go ahead, John.
had a question. Why did he use the word substance in the secondary sense when the substance should only be the primary thing?
Because it is a substance. It is in those things in themselves also have a certain specialness to them, right? So if you think about man as a species, is there not something special to the group of individuals that fall within that species?
Yeah.
That's why he called them substances.
Okay.
They're
Because
also substances.
They all contain some aspect of primary substance. They
Correct.
are all.
Yeah. So you could talk about his
all
skin,
within the
couldn't you?
primary substance, correct? Yeah, okay.
What's that, John?
I was gonna say it's all within the primary substance.
Well, no. Remember, the primary substances are within the secondary substances. So go back to the tree for a second, Raven.
Yeah.
Yep. Go back to the tree for a second.
Yeah.
So remember, John, the primary substance in this example is Socrates at the very bottom.
Right.
Socrates is part of man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You are also part of man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am also part of man. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so all man, I would say mankind, right? All mankind is part of man, the species man, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, but as we've said, the individuals are what the primary substances are. You are a primary substance. I am a primary substance as individual things that fall under man. But if you look at man as a whole, made up of all individuals, I would say all individuals throughout time as well, because time is one of those attributes that attaches itself to individuals, as we saw in the 9 accidents, right, or attributes. That group, man, is also something special. It's also something important. So it is also a substance. But it is not a primary substance because the primary substance is the most individual.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so it's secondary. It's secondary to what? Secondary to the primary substance. Okay, and the same with rational animal.
Just as important, but secondary to the primary.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's important in that it is, again, I'm using the term because it makes sense to me, specialness. There's something special about that thing as a substance, as a subject, right? You would say if you're being antiseptic about it, right? Man is a subject. It could be the subject of a proposition, man. The word man, the name man, the thing man could be a subject of a proposition, and it is. As a matter of fact, if you predicated rational animal of man, right? Man is a rational animal, using the example here, right? You might say, John, given what I think your belief system is, you might say man is a spiritual animal, or man is a spiritual entity, something like that, right?
I tend to go that way.
Yeah. But however you do that, however you create that relation, that predication of whether it's rational animal of man, or in the case that I just gave you as the example, spiritual being to man, no matter what you do, that relation there, it's still something special about it. It's still a substance, right? And these are all substances. They're just secondary substances. And Raven will talk about in a minute why the secondary substances are important.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Let's get back to, we did that one, didn't we? Right. Something else that he says in chapter 5 as well. It's plain that the name and the definition of the predicates can both be affirmed of the subject. And I'll just get the ball rolling by sort of saying, what does Aristotle mean by predicates?
Oh, you guys got to know this by now.
Wow. That means that they can be affirmed. That means that the truth of the matter can be... You have to be able to say truthful things because you can confirm or deny it, right? That's beautiful.
This is the conversation we were having last week, right? Go ahead, Raven.
Yeah.
Well, and if you break that sentence down, what he's saying is it's plain that starting at the name and the definition and all the predicates can be affirmed to that one subject. So it has to have a built-in truth value. That's my opinion, and that's what I think Aristotle means by that.
So
they've spotted it straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you spotted it straight away. By the way, I will say, as I talk to my wife about this, she is not in agreement that a predicate needs to have a truth value.
Right.
She is not. She does not agree with me on that. One of the very, very, very few things she and I don't agree on.
Have you got an example of what you'd use as a
predicate?
Yeah.
In the example we've been using from Porphyry's tree that was just up there is Socrates is a man. Man is the predicate, right? You're saying something about Socrates. Socrates is the primary substance, and you're saying something about Socrates.
Sorry, your wife said. What did your wife say? Then?
Oh, she said she disagrees that the predicate has to be a truth value. So what we were arguing last week is, right, if you say Socrates is a man, then in order to predicate man of Socrates, because you're talking about a primary substance, something that is, right, that exists in reality, that Socrates has to be a man.
So did your wife give you an example of what she means, though? When would you use that?
It is exactly what Cool Cat was talking about last week, and I think Brenda, when Brenda came in as well, was talking about the same thing, that you don't have to, right? You could say Socrates is a woman. You can say that, right? You could put those words together and you can say that. And in the strict definition of subject and predicate, it's valid, right? Socrates is a subject, woman is a predicate. You could say Socrates is a woman.
Yeah, yes. There could be some Socrates out there that is a woman.
No. I'm talking about Socrates.
Let me
put it this way.
Yeah.
Spot on is a woman. Now, I could say that, and technically, grammatically, I would be correct in saying spot on is a woman. I could absolutely say that. I could put those words together and say that. And grammatically, it's correct because woman is a predicate of the subject spot on.
Yeah, but do you? That depends on whether you think, spot on is a woman, though. I mean, if you think that spot on's a woman, then you're writing it, right? And you think, it's a woman.
Or do you?
If he's not a woman, then
that's where the question of a truth value comes in, right? So
without the truth value, there's no meaning to that statement.
We're going right back to where we were last week, and I love it. It's fantastic. Fantastic. So look, I think you're right, but I got to play the other side to this as well, right? Which is to say, and this is what Cool Cat was saying as well. Well, who is the arbiter of truth then, right? And then if you deny me the ability to say Socrates is a woman, right? If you deny, even though I might be completely wrong, even though I might know that
who are you
Socrates,
tell me I can't say it.
Yes, who are you to tell me I can't say that? Right?
Yeah, that's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really strange. Freedom of speech.
I would argue that the arbiter of the truth is reality.
And there you go, right? It's what we've talked about in this arena for quite some time, right? Is reality. But then there needs to, inevitably, we're going to get there, and we're going to talk about this as we go through these discussions, right? Is like, then what is truth? What is reality? Because as we know, right, in this arena, specific to the things that we talk about the other 4 days of the week, typically, right? People have different views of what is reality and what is not reality. And what is reality to you? And does there have to be a consensus around what reality is or not? This shit's mind-blowing, guys, and we've lost it. We've lost it. Especially in 2022, it's like we talked about last week, you can't ask questions anymore, right? You can't challenge what somebody might say reality is, what quote reality, right? But it is important, I think, to understand what was meant by other, let's just say, other cultures in other times. I would say the ancients. I would say people that are closer to the creator, right, or the creation. That's the way I view it, right? In time, in linear time.
Created. I mean, going
Yeah.
back, it was absolute, as we all know, and that was a time when they
Exactly.
understood what beauty was.
Exactly. There's something that's been lost, but this idea of this idea that predication needs to have a truth value. At least, again, every day that I'm looking at this stuff, it becomes more and more apparent that the root of that is the idea of reality and truth, and it's ages old. So we're not treading any new ground here. It's new for us. But
No.
Right.
Yeah. And there's going to be a few word changes and some interesting twists ahead, I'm sure.
Absolutely. But as Bev has said, it's really about how we as a group, right? How are we going to think about these things? What does it mean when someone can come in and say, knowing that Spot On is a man and saying, yeah, Spot On's a woman, totally. I know Spot On's a man, but I'm just going to say Spot On's a woman because I could say it. Well, all right, good for you. I mean,
in this sentence right here, it's plain that the name of the definition of the predicate is supposed to be affirmed. It doesn't say used of the subject. It's affirmed, which to me I take as factual.
You would think, right? You would think. And also, or not affirmed, right? Or you have to have a truth value that says Spot On is not a woman. If you want to use the predicate woman, you'd have to have the negative, not. Spot On is not a woman, okay? You're back to a truth value.
But that wouldn't be a predicate, though, would it? Because
it would. Absolutely, it would. Yes, indeed.
I don't see how Socrates gets to be a man and I get to be a woman.
I was hoping you weren't going to pick up on that, Spot On, but thanks for that.
Oh, I'm slow, but not that slow.
Yeah, but no, John, woman in that sentence, right? Spot On is not a woman. Woman is absolutely a predicate, and I think those of us that agree that there needs to be a truth value for predication would agree.
Spot on.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. I see how you mean it. Okay, all right, I get it.
It is because of the fact that we've used the word not.
Okay, I get it.
With the verb is, right?
We've negated.
Yeah, we've denied it. So this is the idea. And guys, when we get to logic, this is all going to be. This is everything that happens in logic, right? You either affirm or deny, affirm or deny, affirm or deny, right? It's either true or it's false. And this is the setup of propositions. These are propositions. When I say Spot On is not a woman, right? That is a proposition. Getting it?
I think it's interesting as well that we've only been arguing about this, arguing in the correct term about this for a couple of weeks, and yet we've already found two written sort of bases to say that Aristotelian logic does include a truth value in predication, and we've only been looking at it for a few weeks.
For me, again, this is going to be a personal thing, right? Everybody's going to have to take it in themselves to determine. But again, to me, absolutely, to me, has to have a truth value, right? But other people are going to have a different opinion of that. I think to Bev's point about our group is it's good to know that, right? It's good to know where people stand. On this, right? Because if you don't believe that there needs to be a truth value when you're talking about a specific item, not something that's conceptual, right? But a specific thing that is that now the primary substance, then you've got to wonder: are you trying to be a sophist? Are you a sophist? Are you purposely trying to deceive me?
Or have you already deceived yourself?
Yeah. Paralogist, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the two choices now. But before, you hear it a lot about people calling other people liars, right?
Yep.
Be aware now that there is another side to it. That person could have completely fooled themselves.
Yep, 100%.
It's so hard to tell the difference. That's why what we do now within the communication and the ability to describe things and communicate that, like you said, just Kevin, you either affirm or deny your predicate, right, of the subject. It can be done because the subject is obviously something real. You can check all of these things within this system that Aristotle's talking about, as far as I can see anyway.
I mean, the question I would ask anybody now is, or the question in my mind when I come across somebody that I think is a sophist and may have lied or misled, is, have you lied or have you been misled in the past? Have you been misled? Have you been lied to, and then you're carrying that forward, or are you purposely and knowingly carrying that? So now there's a difference now, isn't it, between somebody that's knowingly lied and somebody that's been misled and he's arguing a point without realising that it's facetious. That's the way I see it. That's why I see it now. Like Bev was saying, it used to be easy just to say somebody's a sophist, but it's not quite as clear cut as that anymore. In my mind, it isn't anyway.
Yeah.
And the other thing to kind of watch out for is as we look at parsing these propositions, right? It's easy to say something like Socrates is a man, right? Or spot on is not a woman. To be fair to spot on here. But it becomes more, it becomes a little bit more vague when the thing that you're talking about, the subject that you're talking about, is not something that you can gain a consensus of truth on, right? So when you're talking about especially something that's conceptual, now you've got to be careful with that verb. The verb is or is not. Then you need to think about it in terms of could be or may not be or not necessarily, and those terms are all valid, and you can predicate that way, and you can create propositions that way. But that's what I mean when I say there's an intention to the words that you choose and how you put them together. Or there should be anyway. There should be an intention to it.
But we don't write lesson though. Right?
Yeah.
Predicating of and in. You can only predicate of something. So if it's a concept, then you cannot predicate upon it. Well, because it is in.
It depends on what verb you use, right? Because like I said, you could say could be, right? And if it's plausible, because think about logic, right? If you're putting together a proposition, and I don't know what an example is off the top of my head, maybe somebody can think of something, but where you'd say this could be this, right?
Well, that's inductive, isn't it? Like, I think you're talking purposely deductive logic here, Aristotle. Yeah. I don't think he's talking about inductive at all. There's a possibility that inductive has been added in afterwards.
Yeah, and we will get into some of that, I think, as we go down the road.
Yeah.
But inductive is absolutely a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you need to be aware of that, right? You need to be aware of that and how that works. And how this is all part of the wizardry. You're on it, Bev, right?
Yeah.
It's changing. It's being able to change a proposition that says this could be this into this is this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And that switch, that wizardry can happen really quickly. And right under your nose.
Yeah, and oftentimes, right, because it's wizardry, trickery, you don't see that sort of stuff until somebody points it out. Then once somebody points out a magic trick, it's not a magic trick anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You can see through it, and that's what I believe this formulation of everything we're doing here now. It arms you with the tools to be able to see those tricks. And it maybe if you can't see it, somebody else might be able to point it out to you. And then it gives you the ability to see that magic trick. That's why you need people around you to be able to discuss all of these things. Because there may be somebody out there that can point out this magic trick to you. I know everybody in this room probably has opened my eyes to one or maybe more of these little magic tricks that you are able to then see. It's great.
It's interesting, Bev. I've just done a quick search in the Trivium book that I'm using as one of my main sources, and I did a search on induction, and the first place it comes up is when it's looking at the fallacies. And
there you go.
Here, logic is the normative science which directs the operations of the intellect so as to attain truth, just as metaphysics or ontology deals with all things as they are in their most abstract, their most general, and therefore their one common aspect. Being so, logic deals with all that is thought in its most general aspect, which is truth. And then it's got the requirements of truth are: 1, what is thought must represent what is. This is the norm of conception. And then you've got thoughts must be consistent among themselves. So that's basically, and it's put that under discussion of the fallacies and what to watch out for. So I'll read the rest of that with interest later.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that the first time it's mentioned in the book is under the fallacies.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. Which is at the end, right? The fallacies come near the end, right? It's not as if it's redeemed after that at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
So have we dealt with that one?
Until it comes up again, Raven.
I say until it comes up again.
Yeah.
All right. What did I say? Oh, that's it. What did you mean by predicates? Species and genera. I was hoping somebody would spot the truth aspect of it, and I was glad to say that Bev came through for us.
Anytime.
Right. And now we've got the startled owl again. Why does Aristotle suggest that species is more informative than a genus? Any ideas, anyone? Thinking of how the tree's set up and everything?
Yeah, go back to the tree for a moment. That might help a little bit, Raven.
There we go.
These are two words, right, that are just as new to me as was a predicate and all of the others, right? I've heard them, but I can tell instantly Aristotle's not talking about anything that I would know these words to mean, right? So you guys are going to have to lead on exactly what you think this is, because I haven't got a clue as this relates to this.
Well, so let me give you a little bit of a hint. So there is a hint inherent in the names of those things. So you have species. What's the first 5 letters of species?
SPEC, special, specific.
Yep, specific.
Yeah.
Special. Yeah. All same root word, right? That's where Aristotle is it's specific, or it's special, or it's differentiated in some way, right? And then what about genus?
Yeah,
Gen,
general,
right?
yeah.
General, right? So there's your hint as to how Aristotle and Porphyry are using those. It doesn't mean that species and genus don't mean what they mean when, at least when I learned them in biology, right? Genus and species, and when you're doing plants and all those kinds of things, right? They still mean that.
Similar sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, because they are, right? They're special and they're general at the same time. But here's the important thing, though. Look at the tree. The things in the middle are both genera, or genera is the plural of genus, right? They're both genera and species.
Yeah.
Right? They're both genera and species. From, in this example, rational animal, animated body, and body are all four of those are both genera and species. Okay? So back to Raven's question, what makes a species more informative? Informative is not a loaded word, it means informative. Informs you. Why does a species inform you more than a genus does? So take a look at those things that are genus.
Yeah, there's more genus than the specific things, because you identify the specific thing, and from that you get the genera. Once you've identified this,
spin it round. You have it right, but spin it round. You have genera and species flip-flopped.
Right. So the genera. Go on. You.
Yeah. It's from the general, right? From the genus, differentiates to a species, becomes more specific than to a species, right? So if you think about animal, if you just look at animal and man, right? So you have animal as a genus and man as a species. What is it that differentiates all animals, or I should say, what is it that differentiates man from all animals? Give me an example. There's one that Aristotle uses specifically that I never thought of in my life until I read it in the Organon.
We lie.
That's a good one. That's not the one, but that is a very good one, John. That's excellent. That is a difference between animal and man. Absolutely. Another one, the one that Aristotle uses, is the term risible or risible, which means the ability to laugh, which I never thought of before. But that is a difference, right?
So I put it this way, Bev. If I gave you two bodies, one of them was a cadaver, that was named Socrates, and the other one was a living animate person called Socrates. So if you look where they are on the tree, which one of those is going to give you the most information about who Socrates was? Is it going to be the dead one down in the body, or is it going to be the living Socrates?
Yeah, obviously the living one, because you could actually converse with that one to find out more information and more specialness, don't you? More. What was you said your definitions of species?
Yeah, specific. It becomes more specific. It becomes
more specific.
Yep. So as you go down one of these trees, whatever the tree is, and you could build your own trees, your own porphyry trees, if you will, by taking any primary substance, right? Any one at all. Take the travel mug that John was using as an example, right? You could create a porphyry tree with that cup, with that mug, right? And the first place you'd go is the difference between a cup and a mug, right? Because there could be a difference between a cup and a mug. So, and then you can go up from there, right? Vessels, and so on and so forth, up the tree. But the idea that species is more informative is because it is getting down to the specificness of the thing until you get to the primary substance. And then the only more specificity you can have is those attributes, back to the attributes, the other 9 categories, the quantity, the quality, the relation, the time, right? All those things. That's the only next level specificity you can get. But those aren't species. And neither is Socrates a species, because Socrates is a primary substance. So if you're getting nothing else, get that these are different things, right? But it is something to be said with understanding where a species comes from out of a genus, and what makes a species out of a genus. It's the differentiation between things within that genus. So differentiating between all animals to something that's a man is the things that we, like John said, the ability to lie, the ability to laugh, right? Those are 2 examples that differentiates a man from an animal. And it's important to understand that, because when you're talking about other things, when you're getting to propositions of other things, you're going to be tasked, if you're following Aristotle, to follow that same logic, right? You can't have generalness as more specific than species. You can't have genus more specific than species, right? In whatever you're talking about. Does that make sense?
It will. At some point, I think.
Wait till we get to what species and genus really are.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at it as specific in general, is that the way they should be looked at? Species is specific, genus is general?
Yep. Just take a look at the tree, right? So you've got Socrates, which is a primary substance, fits into the species man, right? The species man fits into the genus now, not species necessarily, but because relationally to man, rational animal is a species, is a genus, because it's above it. It's more general than man. Rational animal is more general, so therefore it's a genus. But in relation to animal, which is above rational animal, right? Then rational animal is a species. It's more specific than animal. Do you see how that works?
Yeah, I'm seeing it. Yeah.
Okay. So same thing with animated, but you can go up the tree, right? That's why those middle ones are both genus and species, because it depends on, are you talking about the one above it or the one below it? What's the relation of those 2 things?
I mean, any kind of investigation would take you down that tree in that way, wouldn't it? You would study whatever it is you're studying. Say if it was a desk, you study it as a large whole thing first, and slowly you would start to find out how many drawers it's got. It becomes more specific as you study it further and move down that tree, don't you? You get more and more specific until eventually you come to the
primary substance. Exactly right. Yep. And then the only way to start describing or predicating on the primary substance below it is to go to those attributes, those accidents.
Yeah. And that's when you can start talking about, the beauty of the curve and all the rest of it, where you can get a bit more away from the utilitarian view of things, which is the way I feel that we've got this trap that we've got ourselves into.
Mm-hmm.
We've become a very utilitarian society, and we've lost that sense of wonder and beauty, which is such a shame. But I think studying this kind of philosophy is bringing us back to that, opening our eyes to that, to the wonder of everything, really,
yep.
And the beauty of it all, the specialness of it. We're seeing more and more species within, we're seeing that they're getting closer and closer to the prime substance, and seeing the specificity and the beauty of everything. I think it's fab, I think. So is there anybody still got any issues with that, or they just want to mull it over and then come back to.
Yeah, I missed the last 15 minutes, Raven. Do you mind just going over it, please?
No.
Good one, spot on.
I'm not the Kevin after the live stream.
I was away, but I'll record it and catch up.
Right, where were I've got to figure out where we were to now.
Genus and species. I think you're a couple more down.
That's it.
There you go.
That one. Oh no, I've done that one, haven't I? I must have that sliding twice.
Yeah, I think so. There you go. That's where you were.
So we're moving on to this one now. Oh, that's it. I've put the answer there now. Species is closer to the individual thing. It's also more informative and meaningful. So that's that. Then the next thing is I tried to do a diagram similar to the tree that we had at the beginning that Kevin had found. That tried to summarise. Hold on, let me just get it so it's all on. I need to. Oh, I hate doing this. Change this. Right, can everybody say that?
Yep.
That's it. That's everything on. It's all the same information really, but it includes a little bit of the definitions and the things that we pointed out, so that if you just wanted something quickly to look at that would prompt you with some of these things we've been thinking about. So you've got Aristotle at the bottom, and then you've got what he says about secondary substance next, which is a species is the first thing removed from primary substance, and it is the secondary substance that encompasses individual things of that kind. Whatever you place above that is genera. And then you get what the infima. So basically, you get the first thing above the split between primary substance and then the issue of the split into secondary substances, and then everything. Pardon?
Would you mind just defining how you interpret species as the first thing removed from primary substance? Because I'm not sure I completely understand.
Because it's the differentiate. The species would be the differentiation. That's the way I see it anyway. That you're differentiating.
Oh,
I think I'm getting it now. Okay, I think I know what you're saying.
Actually, it's so look at the position of it, John. So species. Remember, just think about species, right? So think about yourself. You're the primary substance,
right?
Of which species do you belong? Right, man. Right. So species is one level removed from you as the primary substance.
Got it.
Right? If man is the substance, now man in this context is a species, but if that is the substance, it's not a primary substance, it's now a secondary substance, secondary to John, right? But that also has something immediately above it. That something immediately above it is a genus. But that means that man then is also a species, right?
Right.
So man is a species, and then above it is rational animal in that list, in that tree, right? And then you go up from there. So secondary substance specifically is one level removed from the primary substance. The primary substance in this case, we were talking about being you, John. So the secondary substance is man in that case. One level removed.
That would be in the infima species, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And it's called the infima species. And so go back again to that porphyry tree for a second.
You explain that so much better than I did, Kevin.
That's all right. I've been running this around in my head for days and days and days. Okay, so remember we talked about the four ovals in the middle there: body, animated body, animal, and rational animal. And we said those can be either genus or species, depending on its relation to one another, right? Could be either or. Look at man. Can man be either genus or species?
No.
Nope. It's only species. Why is it only species? Why is it not genus?
Okay, you got me.
So what is below man?
The individual.
Correct. That's why.
Oh.
It can only be species because it's the first step above the individual, the primary substance.
Okay.
So if there were more than one thing under man, right? If you could say there were other secondary substances under man, which there are not, there's only primary substances under man, the individuals. John, Kevin, Raven, Bev, Socrates, spot on, right? Only individuals. Then it can't be a genus. Has to only be a species because it's made up of primary substances. Got it?
Got it.
Okay, that's what it means to be an infamous species. The first step above the primary substance. Okay, Raven.
Okay, right. And then so we're almost coming towards. Oh no! Then I was just going to have a quick chat about. I didn't actually get to do much of this, but it was just I was going to give you a brief outline of how we're going to start incorporating this groundwork that we've done with Aristotle into more of the Trivium-based work. So I was intending to give you a bit more than this. But basically, I would say we'd start looking at things like the nature and function of language. And if you think of it, a matter of language is humans communicate via rational speech, which is made up of articulated voice alone, and which is symbolic. And that's what they call the matter, which is that which is bringing it into material manifestation, isn't it? It's the articulated voice and a symbolic meaning to those sounds that come out. And then you've got form of language, where you start looking at the symbolic nature of the matter, how it can be used to transmit meaning. So you've got otherwise known as the form of language. So you've got matter of language and form of language. So one is dealing with the sound and how you form the rational speech, and what the importance of the definition of your words, so that the symbols that you're using, you've come to terms with whoever you're trying to communicate with. It's all going back to that stuff we've talked about before. And then you've got the form of language, which is more to do with how we transmit that, either through language or written down in a script. It's all symbolic. Like matter of language. Writing a book would come under matter of language. The process of putting the symbolic markings down onto paper would be the matter of language. And then the meaning that you intended to transmit would be your form of language. But unless you've come to terms with that symbolic, that's why it all brings you back to the importance of the words that you're using, and the definitions, and how accurately you know and have come to terms with the other person on the language or the written word, whichever way you're working. So that we'd start getting into looking a bit more deeper into all of that. And I did. This will show you how far I got to that part. I was intending to do more than this, but I ran out of energy and time. Parts of speech in general grammar. So we'll be looking at the different parts of speech that we use within general grammar. So it is going back a little bit towards the basics of grammar, which probably bores a lot of people silly. But I'll hold my hand up. We did very little of this in school. So a lot of this general grammar malarkey will probably be fairly new to me. I'm ashamed to admit, really, but that's the truth of it, and that's what you get for comprehensive education. So that's basically what's to come. Like I said, chapter 10, it's and there's still more. Sorry, not chapter 10, chapter 5. There's still more in there, and there's still more study to do around each of the individual attributes. So each what the plan was that each. I don't know whether Kevin's in agreement with this, but what I thought we would do a couple of the attributes or the accidents at the start, because they're a lot simpler and less to get through, unless we get sort of entangled in what language means and how it's been changed and all the rest of it. We'd be moving into more of a Trivium based structure when we start looking at in depth into the grammar and the language and how we use the words and all of that, and then eventually we'll move into the logic. Once we've got a grip of the grammar, we can then move into the logic and then the rhetoric.
Yeah.
If I could just throw in a thought here.
Yeah.
When we look at grammar and we look at the sentence structure, we have the noun, the verb, the subject, the predicate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the definition of noun, verb, and subject, I don't think has ever changed, but the definition of predicate certainly has.
Yeah. It's only
And
changed the last couple of
I
weeks.
think that's the big thing in why the language is so convoluted now.
Yeah.
We didn't stick to the structure we should have.
Yeah. And you're right, and that's what I wanted to actually bring up is the things that we've been going over the last several weeks are essentially parts of grammar. That's something to be aware of, and it's interesting that the organon started there. So there's and just to give you an idea, if you haven't picked up a copy of the organon, there are different translations. In fact, Raven has a different translation that I have. And at least in the conversation of primary substances, I think the translation I had made it a little bit clearer than the translation that Raven has. But with the organon itself, understand, guys, just the organon. This is not other parts of the trivium, right? This is just one thing that we decided to latch ourselves onto first. The organon is a conglomeration or an amalgamation of 6 books in the organon. Okay, we are in chapter 5 of the first book. There are 15 chapters in the first book called categories. Okay, there are 15 chapters in categories. We've only gone through the first 5. Just imagine that. Just think about that. It's mind-blowing, the stuff that we have not, at least I'll say for me, the stuff that I was never taught, that I never learned. And I got one of the best educations that I think anybody could say that they've gotten. I mean, I went to a parochial school in the United States, a Catholic school in the 70s and 80s, very specialized training. Went to high school, a Catholic high school, went to university. I never got any of this. And I dare say most of us haven't ever, which is a shame because this stuff is not for the elites, but they've made it for the elites. They've made it for the academics, right? The professors. That's why when you look this stuff up on YouTube, that's all you get is, right, Raven? That's all you get is university professors and it's like philosophers that just blow your mind, and spot ons come in with Wittgenstein, and these are the people that have entertained this stuff, not the quote kind of normal people, right? So no wonder why in today's society we always defer to the authorities, because we've never entertained this stuff. It's never been given to us. There's more learning that we've done in the last 4 weeks on this Discord than I think I learned in all of my university time. It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy.
I'd be with you on that too. Can I just touch on a point? Because I don't. Can you go back one slide, Raven, please?
That one?
Yeah. Right,
Yeah.
it says here, matter of language. Humans communicate via rational speech, which is made up of articulated voice alone and is symbolic. Now, is there a chance that what I perceive as symbolic, as in, i.e., the symbols, I would think they're talking about the letters, the symbols that they make, talking about the thing that you're talking about, but it says articulated voice alone. Yeah. So is there some sort of another shift in the words, right? Does Aristotle mean symbolic as we do, or I personally?
Yeah, that's not a quote from Aristotle. I'll put that first.
Yeah.
But I know where you're going, because I wouldn't. I've put the quote as it's written, but I wouldn't totally agree with that quote, because I think that body language, gesture, expression, all goes into that. Which is why I said later on that I brought it back and said that you can have written in there as well as verbal speech, because I think that particular quote misses out a large part of human communication, I think, which isn't actually tied up with letters and words. Is that where you were getting at, Bev?
Well, it's just the idea there that it says which is made up of articulated voice alone and is symbolic.
Yeah.
It's sort of saying that the speech is...
Can't they?
Sorry?
The words are symbolic that you speak.
It's symbolic.
They're an agreed symbol, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that's what... Correct?
Yeah,
articulated voice, the word, and you're symbolic of the subject. That's the way I took it. Voice alone, the words that are being spoken, is symbolic of the subject, which to me, I took it you're describing the subject.
No, this was a general. We'd moved off. Sorry, I should have made that clearer. We'd moved off discussing the subject there.
I get it, but that's still the way I take that statement. But I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. Just the way I took it.
It could go that way. But what do you see that's missing out of that then, Bev?
It's just the way that, me personally, when I see symbolic, I see symbols. And as pertaining to grammar and words and all of that, I see a written word. But when it's saying it's articulated voice alone, it's saying that symbolism, right, symbolicness, is spoken, right? It's the actual thing that I think of as a symbol, like the words, the letters. It's not what they're talking about there, right? It's the words are symbolic of the thing.
Yeah, they're talking about speech. Now, if you take a word, this is how I would do it in my head anyway. Say if you took the word, I don't know, let's think. I've got a cup, in front of me. Now, if you write cup, you get a mental image of what a cup is, don't you? With all of the attachments that you've got with the word cup. But you could say the word cup, and you would get those same thoughts and connections, wouldn't you? So it's still a symbol. It's just a sound. It's just a sound symbol rather than a written symbol. Does that make any sense?
Oh.
More, I can think of it in a way that you can symbolize through speech what a cup is, if you can use the right words and you can portray that to somebody else.
Yeah, that's why you've got to come to terms, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's even harder when you're doing it through speech, really, because I don't know. I just think that it's harder to do it through speech, and if you're writing it down, because once it's written down, it's there, isn't it, as a record. But you're doing it in speech, and then halfway through a conversation, somebody else decides to change the definition. And unless you've been recording, you've got no record, have you?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't actually agree with voice alone there, personally. I know they're talking about language as if it's as if they're only talking about. I take language as to be more than that, which is written and verbal. I don't know if everybody else agrees with that.
Yeah,
Well,
I do, and actually, I think it's more than that. Even it's like you said, it's body language. There's a lot of
Yes.
things that make up communication. I would even say it's the experience of whoever you are conversing with or communicating with, because
Yeah.
it's going to be how they are going to take your speech. You may mean it one way based on the words that you're using, your body language, your tonality, all those things, and also your experiences in your life that have made you speak the way you've spoken, right? But the person that you're communicating with has their own experiences, their own tonalities, and what those things mean, right? Their own words that they understand and that they view. So the idea of human communication just itself is difficult. What I would say is I'd like to know what is meant by symbolic there. I agree with Bev. Symbolic of what exactly, right?
I agree,
Well, to
Kevin.
me, it's symbolic of whatever. See, to agree, a symbol that's written down like a word is easier to me to that you can come to terms with and agree, because it's there and you can sit there and you can agree what that exact word means. But when you're talking symbolically via language, it's so much tied up with your own thought processes, your history, what that means to you personally, that you might be communicating via tone and gesture and voice, you know, that you can't do via paper.
Yeah, this is
So,
this is
so what,
why.
you know, to come to terms when you're just speaking verbally, I should imagine, in a way, is harder because you can't get into that other person's head, can you?
Exactly. And this is why I brought this term up before. I highly suggest, if you have never looked up neuro-linguistic programming, you do that, because it's even to the point of there's a concept in neuro-linguistic programming called mirroring, and it's something that psychologists use when they are talking to a patient, that they will mirror, they will sit the same way that the person is sitting. If they're crossing their legs, they'll cross their legs. If they're folding their arms, they'll fold their arms. If if the patient has their head cocked to one side while they're conversing, they'll cock their head to one side. Those types of things have nothing to do with speech and nothing to do with necessarily understanding, but there becomes then this linkage between the two people that is totally nonverbal and is on some level neuro, right? So neuro-linguistic. There's a lot of bad connotation when you look up neuro-linguistic programming, but there's a lot of good stuff as well that can be used when
for good and it can be used for good and bad, can't it?
good and bad, like with most things, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I did want to bring up, because Paper Organist has been on it today. Shout out to Paper Organist on the YouTube chat. But in regards to this, he says, for example, he says we communicate in different forms using same words. For example, am I a man? Question mark. I am a man. Period. Same words formulated differently, different form when matter remains the same. I think that's very true. Right?
Yeah. Shout out to Organist.
Yeah, right here too. That was very good.
Yeah. Could it mean cymatics? Someone asked in the YouTube chat. Yeah, it could. Absolutely. Yeah. It's getting into all this stuff that, again, I think has been lost. And it looks like we did have someone. I was going to say a troll, but I guess I just did. But someone says, so blame academia for your choice not to learn stuff. Okay. No, we're not blaming academia. We're not blaming academia at all. All we're saying is that even in university, we're not getting this stuff. You have to be specialized in philosophy to get this kind of stuff. And even that, I don't know how many are going through things like the Organon in philosophy in university. And it's foundational. This stuff is foundational. It's what makes us be able to communicate with one another clearly and honestly. I say honestly and truthfully. It's learning these types of things that we've learned in the last few weeks. That's not something that should just be meant for philosophy majors. It's ridiculous. Yeah. This is stuff that should be taught in the first, second, and third grade to children.
And the thing is, you can't self-teach yourself anything if you're not introduced to it in the first place. I wasn't exposed to anything in my school childhood to do with philosophy and the Organon and any of this stuff. Even down to basic grammar was very poor. But fair enough, you can go and teach yourself in better grammar. But if you're not introduced into some of this other stuff, how are you even going to think to go and research it and teach yourself about it?
I totally agree, Raven. And here's the thing. What's not being taught, and I will blame academia for this, is the ability to think, the ability to critically think, the ability to ask honest questions, the ability to have honest conversations. Go into any university in 2022 and try to ask a question about anything controversial today. Try to ask a question about whether a man is a man or a woman is a woman. Go ahead and try it. See how far you get if you don't get kicked out of school in the first place.
Yeah.
Though these things in 2022, there are topics that are not allowed in university. Not allowed.
No questions.
Yeah.
No questions. Don't ask anything. Just defer to the shadow giants, whether they be shadow giants that just published a paper last week or ones that published papers hundreds of years ago. Just defer to the shadow giants. And by the way, I don't think we should take Aristotle necessarily as gospel either.
No, definitely.
Right? Everything should be questioned. Everything.
Yes, people could have rewrote it, right? As said by the many different versions, right? I mean, it's obvious that somebody's done something, and maybe you translated it differently. You know, different people might translate words differently.
Exactly. And it was also funny because Spot on and I had a conversation about that very thing earlier today. In that
was brilliant.
Why in the world should anyone trust the intent of any translator? Right? Who said that? Right? So I mean, you just take that into. It's easy to take that into the biblical worldview if anyone has studied the Bible and you get into all the different translations of the Bible. But that's the same for any kind of thing that's being translated. Just look at the conversations that we've had around what they did to Euclid, right? And the idea of there are no axioms anymore. There's only postulates, and the 12th axiom has now become the 5th postulate. In some ridiculousness, when you look at what that actually says, and it's so clear. Bev's done it on his board, probably dozens of times, but certainly multiple times that I can remember in like 5 seconds. It's like it's an axiom. It's a self-evident truth. But nope, not anymore. Why? Because the whim of a translator. Like a translator is somehow totally honest and totally straightforward, and they would never have an agenda. No translator has ever had an agenda, right? It's fucking ridiculous.
Well, a translator would need to be at least consistent in their translation.
Oh, would they?
The consistency in their translation, they're going to be like, well, this is garbage.
Would they now?
Translating it one way over here, but translating it another way over here. So
Lemon,
at least
you
to
should
see consistency.
You should read some commentaries and on translations, different biblical translations, and see there's been schisms in the Christian community just because it's easy to get into the Bible, right? The Bible is an easy thing to nail on, right? Look at how many schisms there have been in Christianity in 2,000 years because of translations.
Yeah, but they're minor things like a word
Are
here,
they?
a punctuation there, but nothing that really fundamentally changes.
Are they? Are they?
No.
Are they? There are sects of quote Christianity that don't believe that Jesus Christ is any kind of deity, but yet they call themselves Christian.
Though, with the rest of the context of the book, even if there was an unclear translation,
I see.
The rest of the context of the text gives you a pretty good indicator of what, if anything, they were trying to communicate.
But you get my point, right? And there is always, when you're talking about human beings, you always have to try to glean an intention. That's what we're getting at with the importance of communication and all the things that go into communication, right? There's no one can say that every translation of everything or every conversation that anyone ever has with another human being is 100% completely and totally honest, and that both parties understand exactly what the other party has in mind. It's impossible.
That's why you use context clues and other stuff to help infer a pretty consistent meaning. Otherwise, communication itself wouldn't even be a thing. We have enough information to get a pretty good idea of what they're trying to say.
Pretty good. Listen to your own language, Lemon. Pretty good. Pretty consistent. Granted. Not exact, yeah?
What do you mean? Well, exact enough. Exact enough to get a meaning.
Exact enough.
Pretty accurately.
Yeah,
if there's some sort of discrepancy, usually we can ask the author or just use context clues for the rest.
Can we ask the author? What if the text is thousands of years old?
We could talk about the culture that interpreted the text and see how they applied it and appealed to that.
That's true enough. True enough. That's called hermeneutic. That's a hermeneutic principle. Absolutely true. You're 100% on with that. Totally agree. The point is, though, that, and what we're talking about here is the importance of the different pieces of communication. The things we've been talking about with Aristotle in the last 4 weeks and predication, all that stuff, is just a small, tiny little portion of it. Tiny.
I mean, I'd like to read you again. I've read this before, but I think it's so important. It was Sister Miriam Joseph, and she wrote about it. This is to do with education. The utilitarian and servile arts enable one to be a servant of another person, of the state, of a corporation, or of a business. And I'd say there's lots more than that. And to earn a living. The liberal arts, in contrast, teach one how to live. They train the faculties and bring them to perfection. They enable a person to rise above his material environment, to live an intellectual, a rational, and therefore a free life in gaining truth. So I think that's an awareness that anyone should have when you come to any form of education. That the most important form of education is teaching you how to think and how to think rationally, so that you can see through the bullshit, basically. And I think that's what all this stuff helps with.
Absolutely true, Raven. Absolutely true.
It's not a panacea, but it helps.
I mean, we are all human. I mean, there aren't that many different situations that we're in. Even if we go with thousands of years ago, people still got to eat, find some way to, get shelter, even work. These contexts are pretty universal, and therefore you're going to have pretty universal ways of interpreting what the hell, if anything, is going on with any text. Because most people have some pretty common themes and situations that they're in that lead to more or less fairly consistent interpretation. Maybe a little bit of a difference here or there, but not much.
I think you're minimizing it a little bit, Lemon. My opinion is just look at the different cultures. Again, Spot On and I had this very conversation earlier today, and just the idea that some cultures are more visual than other cultures. Just look at the Asian language itself, right? The symbols that are used in their language. They're a visual culture, right? We aren't. We descend our today Western world. It tends from the Latin and the Greek, right? It's much more of a analytical kind of culture that we come from. But in the Asian culture, they come from much more of a visual, allegorical, metaphorical kind of culture. Those things don't translate well. You have to really work to translate those things from one to the other to really have meaningful communication. I think to minimize the difficulty of language and communication is to pin yourself down to almost certainly have misunderstanding, in my opinion. What else you got, Raven?
That's it. Other than saying that we're hoping to start moving into a more of how we apply this in practice while we carry on studying the philosophy and all the rest of it, but start looking at how we can put it into practice and perhaps get some examples of how some of this stuff has been used against us in the past, so that we can pick them apart a bit and have a look and analyse them. I think Bev has talked about that in the past, doing that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, how... it's okay going through all of this stuff, but there has to be a use for it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And that's why we're doing it. We, at the end of this, I want to be able to communicate with people more efficiently. And that's what's all in all of this for me. I want to be able to communicate all of those fallacies that I see, because I see a lot of them. And I want to be able to discuss them with people and make sure that they are indeed fallacies.
Yeah.
And there's only one way to do that, and that's to have an absolutely certain understanding of the words that you're using and how you place those words together to form structure and meaning to what you're talking about. That's what this is all about, isn't it?
It is.
It is completely. And actually, it goes right to the last. I mean, the Logos is just dripping. You know, the last 2 days, Bev, the last two shows, Monday and Tuesday. I mean, it's just been dripping with the the idea that words mean things. And when we were getting into the conversation with Alpha on, he wanted to talk about the surface of the earth and what is a surface, and it's just dripping with this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And how easy you can fall into paralogism and then sophistry if you're not careful, right? Just to win. I think somebody said that in the YouTube chat yesterday when we were talking to Alpha and then to Brenda after that. It was like, revert to sophistry just to win.
Well, you see, that's the thing that I always thought was strange when I first came into this. Like, we were on about a debate, and my understanding of a debate is where two people talk and they present a case in bits. There may be rebuttals to things, but it's not up to them to win. It's the people that they are talking to that formulate an opinion upon the things that they've been talked about, right? To me, there is no win-lose in a discussion and a debate also. It's only interpreted by the people that listen in. All of this, everything that we do when we talk about things, it's becoming more and more apparent. It's just to the individual. Just because there are a load of individuals that say they agree with something that somebody else says doesn't mean it's a win situation.
Yep.
And there's a lot of, like, you're right, though, sophistry, they want to win, but I don't know what it is they're after winning. Because it doesn't seem like a win at the end. I mean, like, how do you win by ad homing somebody? It doesn't seem a correct way to come about these sort of things to me. Win, lose in a discussion about something.
I think it's to stifle the conversation because, again, go back to don't ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever ask any questions. So how can you stifle that communication? How can you stifle human communication? Well, an ad hom is probably a pretty good way to start if you want to stifle it.
Yeah, because the reaction that you get when 3 or 4 people react to that, you can easily derail a conversation with them sort of things.
Yep.
I think we're becoming more wise to them now, though.
Oh, yeah. It's like you said.
See.
It's easier to see who you can have a conversation with. You've said that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thank you two as well for tonight and these sort of discussions. It's great that I don't have to lead them, but the conversation's still there. The people that are in here are actually still having these like Kevin said as well. These conversations that we have aren't just of a night time like this on these streams. They go on all day. We literally talk about this sort of stuff all day, unless we're not gaming or something like that. Talking
well,
about
even during gaming.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, these are the sort of conversations that we would like to have constantly, I think. Anything can be gleaned from looking at this conversation by talking to anyone, I think. More people we can talk to about these sort of things. And even if it's not... if you think the conversation may be beyond you, then start at the beginning. That's what we like to do.
Absolutely. Come in and ask a stupid question. I love it. Because there are no stupid questions. There really are none. But try to avoid coming in and saying, "What's up, dum-dum?" Like, some people do. That doesn't necessarily get us anywhere. But if you must do that, I guess it's fine, and then you can leave.
I know any time that I've popped in and just listened to the conversation, it's always been an education and fascinating. I don't get enough time really to do as much, to pop on as much as I'd like to. But any time you've got the time to pop on, if you're new to the server, then it's mind blowing really. The conversations that go on here that I came across when I first fell into this server. I don't know how I got here, but must have been pure logos. They were really good, intelligent, conversations where people were respectful and I'd invite anybody to come and sort of say, try it out, see what you think.
Challenge yourself. That's what it is. Like, you will never find a better place to challenge yourself on, beliefs. It can be tough.
Yeah, and we can get quite passionate about things, and I think we can come on pretty strong. I know I do, just because that's my nature. But even, like I'm glad Lemon came in, because at least, we found some common ground on the idea that you have to strive to understand hermeneutic principles, which means if you're reading anything, what did it mean to the people that it was written to at the time? Or can you try to figure that out? That's super important. That's really important.
It's unbelievably important.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't, even if it's, even if it's a contemporary, even if it's 50 years ago or 100 years ago, and we're not looking at something that's 2,000 years old or 3,000 years old, but to understand what that would have meant to those people at that time in their culture.
And you hear and see too many people today just thinking they can assume that they knew what these people were talking about, even though they've never had a discussion with any of the people.
100%.
That is wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It
Go ahead,
is
Lemon.
somewhat justified, though, because we share so many common experiences. And if words can still, maintain meaning with similar concepts throughout, years of time, well, then similar meanings can do so also. So there is some justification in, some interpretation of what they said that's fairly, spot on and accurate, one would assume.
Up to an extent, I'll agree with you, but to be completely accurate with what they were saying or how they were speaking, I don't think it's possible, in my opinion.
I think Lemon's got a point. I mean, there are some you can always find some things that you can trace back through time, through writings and those kinds of things that carry the same kind of meaning, right? Even back to Aristotle's time and stuff, because how I know that is because the interpretations, there are, so as Lemon pointed out earlier, right, there are so many consistencies or similarities in the different translations that, okay, I get that concept, so therefore the concept has survived to me in 2022.
Well, you have to read. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, John, but to assume that is the problem, right? To assume that that's the case without verifying whether that's the case, and then looking at the differentiation between in a topic between what one person might read and another person might read, and understand where that came from. It's, again, I go back to the example that Bev had with the 12th axiom in Euclid. That is so easy to understand as a self-evident truth, that the idea that you would obfuscate that into a fifth postulate that so that you can try to prove a in my opinion, a fantasy, is ludicrous. It's ludicrous on its face. But yet, I would say the vast majority of people that entertain geometry don't believe that the 12th axiom is really an axiom. It's amazing to me. How does that even happen?
Postmodernism.
Yeah, right? They do the wizardry. They do the wizard trick by something that the originator of that, quote, imaginary geometry, his term, not my term, his term, imaginary geometry. And there you go. You do away with how many years of self-evident truth? Goodbye. It's crazy to me. But there you go.
So basically, if I understand it correctly, what you have to do is when you're reading an author from the past, you have to read other authors from the same time period to see if they use the language in the same way. It doesn't have to be that it's the same subject matter, just other contemporary authors to see how the language is used and formulated. But
that would help you. Yeah.
But it still comes down to context, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, intent. It does. Yeah, that does. But yeah, that would help. Absolutely. I mean, again, I go back to biblical translation because I've spent a good part of my life getting into that. But the hermeneutic principle with that is if you're able to look at easier to understand passages that agree across translations, and then look at the context of harder to understand passages that aren't in agreement across translations, it can give you a better clue, right? But it's still not concrete. You still have to make a judge, right? You're still going to have a judgment call on any of that, right? And that's where I said all of this stuff. We've talked about it forever. Bev has said, "What's proof to you?" That's personal, right? It's to the individual. What's true? What's truth to you, right? What does this translation mean to you? What does this topic mean to you? It's all personal. It's all individual, which to me points right back to what we discussed today, which is primary substance. Why primary substance? Because it's special. It's individual. It's what it means to you. There's something divine in that to me, right? It's an amazing thing. Or we can just treat it like grammar. It's subject, predicate, verb, noun. It's no big deal.
Yeah, that's why I like what's your definition, not what's the definition, because their definitions are wrote down by many different people and they can change. But what's your definition tells you you're speaking to that individual. You're getting to know their understanding and you can then come to terms.
Yeah. I think we'll see how it goes with my work week and stuff like that. And I think Raven's got some stuff that he's got to do next week, so he most likely won't be around. But there's something to be said for how the ancients looked at definition. And I'm going to try to bring that up maybe next week, and we'll talk about that, because the whole idea of species, genera, which is plural for genus, species, genus, and differentia, or the differentiation that causes one to go from genus to species, that differentiation, whatever that differentiation is actually what the ancients used to define things. That's how they came up with definitions of things, is to understand the genus, the species, and the difference. And then they would use those three things to define the thing. So unless... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to bring it up with Kevin before we went, that obviously because I can't make next week because of the things that were going on, which I told you about earlier on. But I was hoping that you hadn't forgot that we were going to bring up at some point this idea of what we say by, your definition is not quite how definition was seen in the past. So it's interesting and good to know that you might be able to do that next week.
I think it's important.
Spend a week on it.
Yeah. Because that it again, not that anyone has to apply that, create a definition in that manner, but I think it's important to know how Aristotle or Porphyry or others came up with definitions, because there was a process that they used. They just didn't pull words out of their rear ends and then create a definition out of it. There was intention behind how they defined things. And again, I had no idea until I got into this that was the case. I had no clue whatsoever. I just thought, I don't know how I thought the definitions came up or were created. Shadow giants, I suppose, if I'm being honest with myself.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
How are things what they are? And I mean, you're trying to tie the name of the word to the definition there, aren't you?
Correct. Hunter, you hit it nail on the head.
Yeah, the name with the definition. And is there any link there? I like it. That's why I initially thought this was, you can see what this particular subject matter is. And it is what you imagine geometry and mathematics to be. That's a structured thing. Well, who said words had to be any different?
Yeah.
I personally, I don't. You tie logic in. There has to be a logical tie between the words and their definitions and how we use them, especially as soon as you add in a truthful element to it.
100%.
Then
reality, right?
There is a meaning behind all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And that's why, again, for me personally, I've always had this mantra, or I'll say axiom, right? That words mean things. And when I finally got into this and I saw how definitions were created, I'm like, well, shit, of course words mean things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Oh,
a
no
revelation,
kidding.
though, isn't it? Like when you think that, you
is.
think, what the? Yeah, of course. Why hadn't I ever thought of that before? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's brilliant stuff. It really is.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Raven, for putting that together, man. You've done a yeoman's job.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you for your input as well. It's been fabulous. It was it's taken it on leaps and bounds because, like I said, I'm coming at this from a beginner, self-teaching really. So, you know, the input of anybody, I appreciate all of the input from everybody on here. You know, anybody from raising questions to even people who have raising a different viewpoint. That's how you move forward.
It's going to be great if we can all reach a point together where this clicks.
Yeah.
Imagine that show.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, keep going over it. Keep going over it and over it and over it. I mean, you know, if this is your kind of thing, if you're getting value out of this, go back and listen to the other shows we've done on this topic. Go back and listen to yesterday in light of what we talked about today. Go listen to yesterday's show. That's some eye-opening shit that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I'll have to go listen to that one.
It depends if you're honest or not as well, doesn't it?
What was that, Spot On?
If you're looking for honesty and
Yeah.
clarity and purity, then surely it's the only way to live.
Yeah, and this, as far as I'm concerned, this goes along with the theme of what we do here, always. Advanced simplicity. We go back to the basics, and for anybody thinking that this is above them or, you know, it's a bit too complicated, it truly isn't. We want to get to the core of it. If there are people that don't understand, coming in and us trying to explain it in multiple different ways by everybody that's in here, trying to explain this stuff, will make it clearer to all of us.
And don't be put off by some of the people that have come in recently and the way that, you know, I don't say dealt with, but, you know, just the questioning and the reasoning is questionable, to say the least. So it's not like that if you come in and don't have to come on a live show. I mean, not necessarily, and just come and have a chat. You know, just as long as you're truthful, that's all that's asked.
Hey guys, this is the basics. I don't think I'm equipped to handle the complicated.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, well, you need to get. We need to get
short,
this.
John.
We'll do it baby steps, like all of us. That's what I need as well, John. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. You guys are a lot cleverer than I am. However unclever you think you are, I'm uncleverer than that.
Well, I will say we have figured out today that Spot On is not a woman. We have figured that out.
Up as well.
We cleared that up today, so I'm happy with it. Hey, by the way, Paper Organist is going off. He's going to get in trouble in the YouTube chat because listen to this blasphemy. For example, the word triangle indicates that this figure is defined as having 3 angles. I mean, that's craziness right there.
Triangles. Wow. Can you imagine?
If he adds in that they add up to 180 degrees, I'm going to lose it. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, good stuff, Paper Organist. You need to come in. I don't know. There could be they could be in the Discord and I wouldn't know it. So, but if you aren't, come in the Discord. Man, it's great. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think this is where we should have been all along.
Oh, look at this, Bev. I have no idea who this is, but someone in the
Yeah,
YouTube
but-
chat. Hang on, spot on. When you leave
Sorry, man.
when you leave the shape of the earth out of it, a lot of what you say seems quite reasonable. No shit. That's what we've been saying. We don't give a flying fuck about the shape of the
Who
earth.
brings
man.
up the shape of the earth? That's them
No one
people.
here. We don't care.
It's the first time it was mentioned today.
The shape obsessed
yeah,
2D earthers. That's who keeps talking about that.
But hey, come on in, man. Come on, hexalobular. If I got that right, I don't know. But great,
Do
yeah.
you not know Hex?
No,
No.
I guess not.
What I was going to say is, what came first, the water or the word? Water.
Water.
Depends on what you mean by word. Logos?
Hmm.
The only thing that wasn't created by God in the Bible was the water. The water was here.
I didn't know that.
That's true.
I gotta come clean. I mean,
Oh boy.
Never spoke the water into
excuse
existence.
the pun.
Water was here.
Oh boy. Yeah, and you go down that rabbit hole of water. Water is symbolic of birth. We all break through the water when we're born.
Cleansing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Go down that rabbit hole for a while. Purity. Oh yeah. Good stuff.
I know Moses did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, no, I don't know Moses did. I just said that.
I mean, even if you look
Oh,
at
yeah.
it scientifically, it's got some fantastically mysterious properties.
Mm.
Water's
Oh,
brilliant.
yeah.
Water is it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, though, going back to Hex's comment in the YouTube, yeah, let's get away from the shape of the fucking earth, for God's sake. There's more important things.
Oh, it's so 2021.
You think?
Yeah.
Holy
Oh,
crap,
we've gone
man.
past the shape of it now.
God almighty.
I mean, we all know how it's measured. They do triangulation and then they work on elevations established
Locally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what a surface is. A superficies.
Yeah. Difference between a superficies and a surface, because that's another one of those words, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Surface.
Exactly.
A wizard
It's another
word.
word I still don't have a full grasp of. Bev.
Yeah.
Superficies.
Surface. The spelling of surface. Sir is that on top of in French? Is it on top of the face? Surface. It's like
Yeah,
maybe a
possibly.
French S-U-R. Like, yeah. Oh, I'll check that.
Yeah, superficies is what is described as the two-dimensional plane. Differentiated itself from a surface. Because it's,
it is on top.
It's born of the conception within geometry, a superficies. Later on within maths and all of that, they have what Spot On's just said. The surface. Above the face of it. It's that bit that you touch. And a face within geometry, just in case anybody is wondering, is a two-dimensional figure. It's a flat surface, a face, 2D, like the face of a clock or the face of the moon, let's say. For those people researching flat moon, the moon is said to have a face, and a face within geometry is two-dimensional, i.e. flat, not two-dimensional as in spherical, because that's ridiculous. People have misunderstandings of definitions of words, but that's where we've been saying it for a long time. That's where the trickery lies. The wizardry and the spell casting. particularly spells. It's very word generated, isn't it?
It is.
Anybody wants to come in? We got anybody in that would like to comment on? We don't think we've got any Globers. I did say that once we start doing this sort of stuff, there are a group of people who makes it very clear now who can talk to people and who can't talk to people. This is just us talking about words. And not words about the shape of anything, just the basic understanding about words and how they're used. I think personally it's fascinating with this sort of stuff. I was always, like I said at the beginning of this, I always considered myself as being mathematical. I've always thought I had a mathematical brain, which then turned into a logical mind. And now I'm understanding that words can do a similar sort of thing, as long as you apply a similar process to those words. And the majority is a truth element, right?
And was that a legitimate predicate? You predicating yourself as mathematical?
I always thought I had at school, I imagined that mathematics was easier for me to do because I could logically derive an answer that was similar to what the textbooks were saying, what the teacher was saying, right? There was a process that I could go around it. I never got the same sort of feeling with words because they were always trying to make me make stories up and imagine things and just write it down. But a logical brain couldn't do that. I always said I've got a really bad imagination because I can't write things down, because I think you work upon an experience whenever you're doing anything like that. So to expect children to be able to write things like they've read in books, which are obviously wrote by adults that are far more experienced and far more understanding of everything that they're dealing with.
Yeah, like poetry. I mean, teaching poetry to a young age.
That was terrible.
About love or
something.
Words.
Anything that, at least for, I totally agree, Bev. At least for me, anything that was written, and in fact, even today, I learn far more from verbal communication than I ever learned from reading. But other people have the opposite viewpoint. They would say that they learn far more from reading than from verbal conversation.
I never looked at it either way. I always looked at it as a combination of both. But through true experiences where the real learning comes, not from books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something to be said, I guess, for the experience of reading, right? But it's a personal thing. What do you get? Do you have a preference one way or another? When I was a corporate trainer, that's one of the things that we had talked about, that we would talk about before beginning a training regimen, and when we would train other trainers, is to get them to understand that people learn differently. There's at the base of it, there's 3 different types of learning, or the way that people can learn. One is, and what most people are, is visual learners. So they need to see it to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the majority of people. At least they say. And it's been my experience as well. If you draw a picture for somebody, they'll get it faster than verbally. But there are some people, there are some people who verbal works for them, right? That it works better than visual. And then there's a third category, which is called kinetic, which is action, moving. They don't learn until they actually do it with their own hands. Right?
You mean that literally?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that category.
Yeah, they and think about it. You could see a diagram or watch a video of someone doing a task, and I think this is true in a lot of in a lot of building, right?
Sure.
Architecture, like we talked about, craftsmanship in woodworking and those kinds of things. You can watch a video, you could read a book on it, but until you put your hands on it and you actually do it, you aren't going to get it.
Like learning to ride a bike.
Yeah, that's kinetic learning.
Exactly.
That's action, actually doing something. Yeah, and you should try to learn what your audience, if you're training or if you're teaching somebody, what your audience, how they tend to learn. Again, most
corporate trainer to conspiracy theorist.
Oh, it's been a long road, my friend.
Wow.
In all seriousness, you know how I got there? Words mean things.
Oh, cool.
That's how I got there. Words mean things. And when I see people start mucking around with words, or what's representative of words, videos, and they're mucking around with things, and they're, something isn't quite right. To me, it's like if you've ever had a hangnail or like a really bad hangnail on your finger, and you always rub it against your pant leg or something. It's like, God damn it. It's like that for me. I hate it. It just gnaws at me. Yeah. So words mean things. That's why I got on, was it Flat Earth Data? Was that yesterday or the day before yesterday? I don't know. All my days are running together, Bev.
Yesterday. Yeah.
When Flat Earth Data came in and started going off on, the Earth as if it was one word. That to me is like a hangnail. It's like a freaking hangnail. Don't talk to me about the Earth. You have no fucking clue what the Earth, one word, is. No one does.
No one.
I could tell you the Earth, as Bev said, the Earth, the stuff I plant things in. Yeah, I can tell you about that.
The substance.
Yeah, there you go.
I just want to say hi to Cleary, man. It's good to see him back. Haven't seen him in a while. Glad to see him here.
He'll be back to his usual self, annoying the Globers pretty soon, I should imagine.
Oh, it's already been happening.
Triggering Globers as usual, like he never left. Yeah, I like Cleary coming around again as well. The conversations, always another level.
Yeah, and he has a good sense of humor too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Globers will be struggling once again. But again, I think, as we've seen, there's conversations that are worth having, and conversations now that I personally can't see the point in having. The same conversation that we've had for years. It's got us nowhere. In fact, I think it's people listening to it, I could possibly try and imagine what the Globers are actually thinking. And we have a term for that. I call that a Penrose effect. Once you start to try and imagine things to the next level, then you can imagine that you can control the rules of whatever it is. Once you've imagined yourself as the expert in that particular thing. And let's face it, there is no globe experts. They don't exist.
I've heard you say that before, the Penrose. What is that in reference to?
There's a particular video. I will let you see it, but it's from a guy called Roger Penrose. His father was the guy that invented the Penrose staircase. Right, you've seen that, the infinite down staircase.
Yeah, that's the it's part of the stuff that DP has done before, right? With kind of looks like a triangle, but it never ends.
Yeah, that's sort of a thing. Yeah. It's an optical illusion, but the Penrose staircase is made up by this guy, right? And Roger Penrose is the son of the guy that did that, right? So once you have a father that does that, and then you turn into Roger Penrose, or like grow up like Roger Penrose.
It's like an MC Escher painting.
A what?
An MC Escher painting. Are you familiar? Yeah,
like Escher. Yeah.
Okay.
The Penrose staircase is like Escher, but Escher's like a concept within, like that's a mind. But this is just like a staircase, 4 steps, like in a square, but they always go down.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
It's an optical illusion,
right?
But yeah. So Roger Penrose, in this clip of the particular video, he goes into geometry, but he goes into geometry of space conceptually. And he says that you know, like once you study it and you begun to understand it, you can grab the rules and just sort of step over. You go beyond the framework of the rules and end up in a very strange place, I would imagine. Places you should never go. You should never take your mind to these places, because there's only madness there. You detach yourself from reality at some point once you step beyond the rules of rationality and whatever is real. Dangerous places for the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Oi, cats! Get out! Arguing with each other. Can you hear that or not? No. It's been a very good day. Very good day. And I hope that this is the new way. I'd love to have discussions like this all the time from now on, because I think this is going to help us within our communication with the certain group of people that seem obsessed with Earthshape. Because I think we've been saying for quite a bit, we're not. Literally, this is how I came around here. It's to understand within the words why some people react strangely when certain words are used in a certain phraseology, just sort of in a certain order.
Because Kevin uses them in a way I don't understand, and I get confused. Just kidding.
I do it just for you, John.
What time is it? It's 11 o'clock. So what does everybody think? Should we cut it short, or is there further conversation on this? I don't want to ruin a very good night with a, ending it in nothingness, if you will. So does anybody want to continue this, or should we just go into the after show and say, everybody, if you want to come and talk in, and we'll end it here with the Buster song and say come back tomorrow.
Yeah, if no one else has anything, there's not much happening in the YouTube chat, so.
Okay, yeah. So yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Say,
stuff.
Come and join us tomorrow. Because
Euclid night tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes. Tomorrow is Euclid night, and Euclid night, I'm thinking of going to the geometry again. Once again, I found a little clip about a water level that we might go over and try and link it to it geometrically.
Awesome. Because
the words now that we're using, obviously, the words and definitions within geometry are very usable within the structure of what we're talking about, with the definitions. They're very exact, and we'll sort of be following that line on. Like you said, I think next week, definitional week, it needs to be done. The reason for definitions and all of that good stuff. Wisdom. How could you do anything else but wisdom on a night like this?
Yeah.
So thank you for watching. Come back tomorrow. We'll do Geometry Day. It's a shame that we didn't end up with any of the logic guys coming in. They were in the chat though, so thanks for you guys coming in the chat. Come and chat next time. Buster's singing us out. Oh, and Essie.
It is probably the single most important mathematical idea of all. The notion of proof by circle and line or ruler and compass construction means that geometry can be known about in a way that is different from knowing about physical things, and so makes geometry epistemically differentiated. Furthermore, starting from circles and lines alone and constructing a relationship using circles and lines alone makes the conclusions certain in a way that nothing else was at the time. In geometric reasoning, the argument and the conclusions were made supremely clear and evident to the senses. Indeed, the concept of proof, a mechanism that gave a warrant for claiming geometry to be perfectly and absolutely true, made geometry the very paradigm of what we mean true and certain knowledge to be. In effect, in our understanding of nature, true means true, like geometry is true.
Come go with me. Open your mind. Was all I ever knew. Finding the knowledge of the real world starts with the point of which has no parts. These are the axioms of life.
True.
And I'll take my chances with the old ways, finding the proofs in geometry.
Perfect.
And I don't care what all the sophomores say. I'll find the proofs
We call this
in reality. 'Cause they were right.
We call this
We know that they were right.
true. We call this proof. Like geometry is true.
Starting with circles and lines alone, constructing the nature of what's known.
We call this proof.
Conclusions are clear and the evidence seen. This 3D space works perfectly. And I'll take my chances with the old ways, finding the proofs in geometry. And I don't care what all the sophists say, I'll find the proofs in reality.
Geometry is true. Perfect. Absolutely.
And all around you is sinking sand. You'll have a place on which to stand. Foundations were already built for you.
Absolutely true.
Open your mind, and I'll take my chances with the older ways, hearing the words of what the ancients said. They say my words sound like sorcery, but there's wisdom in all honesty.
True.
Come go with me. Open your mind. Come go with me. We'll find the truth.
True.